This video is about making selections and how to make a selection in Photoshop. So I have this file open right now with these different elements, and I'm going to move them closer to this board right here, or around it. So let's just start with how would I select the board if I wanted to, let's say, put that into a new file, a new folder. Well, right off the bat, when I look at this board, I can see that it's a solid color. And I have some really cool selection tools that are at my disposal here. When something's a solid color, like this lime green cutting board, I could use something called the magic wand tool. And if I click, just one click, you can see how effective it is at picking up most of this whole object here. So if you have something that has a solid color, think of the magic wand tool. That is the great way to make a selection. I can see here that it isn't perfect. I maybe need to hold down Shift. I can add just a tiny bit here, and a couple more clicks, and it did a really good job at that point. I could edit and copy and paste it to another file, or if I grab the Move tool, I could actually, the shortcut is the letter V. I could move it to another location on the board, but I really don't want to move this. I am going to actually leave the cutting board where it is, so I'm going to get rid of the marching ants or the selection here by going Select, Deselect. Okay, what I want to do is I do want to take all these different elements and bring them closer to the cutting board. So let's take a look at some of the other options that are nested in here. The magic wand tool likes solid chunks of color. The quick selection tool is probably one of my favorite. With that, and I have the brush size, I can adjust the brush size by moving the brackets that are just to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. If I go to the bracket on the right, the brush gets bigger, bracket on the left, brush is smaller. And I can, in just a couple clicks there, I can make a selection of this lettuce. That was pretty easy. It's like painting a selection. To move this closer to the board, I would grab the Move tool, shortcut is the letter V, and then I could move this object actually over. I could then get rid of the marching ants by going Select, Deselect, Command D, and I'm able to move that a bit closer. I'm going to undo that because I want to show you another tool that's new in 2020 here. We have something called Object Selection Tool. This is pretty new. If you haven't taken a look at it, do. It's really sophisticated. You primarily just lasso off the area that you want the computer to take a look at, and in one click, it does an amazing job of selecting the lettuce. I didn't do a whole lot there myself. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go do that with the tomato down here. I see the tomato, and if you take a look at the layers, all these are on one layer. I take this tool, I click, I hold, and I kind of drag out a rectangle or a square around that. Oops. And it does a really good job of selecting that. I mean, this is really a whole lot easier than it used to be. So I'm going to grab the Move tool, and I am going to move this tomato closer to my cutting board, and I'm going to get rid of the marching ants. I'm going to go back up here, and rather than using that object selection tool, I'll just use that quick selection tool again and kind of paint out a selection, grab the Move tool, and move my lettuce over a little bit closer to the cutting board. All right, so let's take a look down here. We have a couple more things we need to take a quick look at. Okay, the pepper. So this would be really hard for the magic wand because these hues are really close. Quick selection works pretty good with this one. If I click, it did good. I had to add a little bit more though. See how it grabbed the yellow part of the pepper? We have a little bit more to go here, so I can use that quick selection. I can hold down Shift and one more click, and now I have the whole pepper. So that was pretty easy. I am going to Select, Deselect, and get rid of that. I want to go take a look at a couple other tools. So we've looked at the object selection, the quick selection, and we've looked at the magic wand. Let's go take a look at a magnetic lasso. So you have a lasso tool over here. The freeform lasso, let me just show you that. it's kind of like wherever I go. There's really no rhyme or reason to that selection tool. I do use it to modify selections. The polygonal tool, that guy likes solid, straight, linear lines like this. That's the way this tool functions best. And then I have a nice linear kind of selection. But with this tool, I want to go look at the magic wand. The magnetic lasso. It likes contrast. So if I click, and this has fairly nice contrast, you can see how I click one time, I'm not clicking anymore. I'm just letting the mouse I'm just pulling it around the object. I don't need to click. There might be a hairy area here because the hue is so close to the shadow, but we made it through that area okay, and the rest of it should be very easy for Photoshop. When I get back to the beginning, I just click, and there's my selection too. So you have multiple ways of selecting the pepper. I'm going to grab the Move tool, shortcut the letter V, and move this over to the cutting board and position it and get rid of my marching ants. Okay, so here I have an interesting kind of little selection. Let's take a look down here. I have this and I want to make a selection, so I've got a couple different options. I could use the easy go-to tool, the quick selection tool, right? One click. Yeah, that took care of it in one click. Can't say enough good things about that. Let's go take a look at the object selection tool. I click on that, let go, and boom, that did a really good, easy job too. You've got a lot of good options here. Another one could be to use the marquee tool. If I grab the elliptical marquee, I go to the center of this and I hold down Shift and Option. I can actually click and hold out and bring out a perfect circle. Okay, so I really don't care how you make your selection. Just go on and grab that selection. I'm going to use the quick selection tool. I'm going to hold down the command and minus, and then you can, if I hold down the space bar, I can kind of bring this down. Grab the Move tool, shortcut the letter V, and bring this up into our composition. There are two other things down here we can take a look at. We have a caret. So now you know a couple different things that could work. The magnetic lasso would be a good option for this. All right, you can see how that works. When you get to a point that's maybe questionable, go on and click. That'll lay down an anchor point. But this is doing fairly good, and that went really quick. When I get back to that point, just go on and click, and now I can grab my Move tool and I can pull this up into the composition. In this situation, I actually want to rotate the caret, and to do that I have to go Edit, and I need to go do a transform. Remember, we could rotate, distort, rescale it, but I'm just going to go Command T. That gives me all the options in one, and I could rotate my caret. If I needed to reduce the size of the caret, I could just do that as well. Just by pulling on this, and there we go. I'm just going to go on and select, I'm going to commit to that selection by either hitting the Enter key or the check mark right here and get rid of the marching ants. Oh, the last thing we have to do is take a look at this. Now this is a little harder. We have individual, we could grab this whole piece, or we could select these olives from the blue background. I'm going to think that the right tool for this will be my quick selection tool. So wow, look what happened there. It grabbed everything. So that is not the tool. This is really difficult to get. So when I look at this, this is going to be a much more difficult selection to make because the hue, I know that we're working with olives on top of a blue plate. But the hue, if you could just imagine you don't have color, just look at lightness and darkness, this is pretty close to a hue that matches. So tools like the quick selection tool are not going to be helpful. I mean, I click, I can kind of, it's not working very well at all. So I am going to go for, not the lasso tool, I'm going to go back to that magnetic lasso. And I am just going to try to control what's happening. When I get to a spot that concerns me, oops, like right there, I am going to start over again. I'm just going to click on the quick selection tool. I am going to click often and lay down anchor points and try to help the computer to make this decision. I can see it's having a little trouble Pretty easy here. Looks like the road's a little smoother for the computer. As I go in here and I'm starting to make a selection of these olives, I can move a little faster here where the contrast is good. Having problems probably here around the shadow a little bit. That's a harder thing for the computer. So just start thinking in light and dark areas. Don't see color. Let color kind of dissipate in your mind's eye as you start thinking about how the selection tools work. This area right here would be very difficult, so I'm clicking a lot to try to help the computer make a selection. I may want to go into an area up here called Select and Mask and actually refine it, smooth it out a little bit. This is a really hard selection. I'm going to feather it just a little bit to make it a bit easier on the eyes. I can shift the contrast one way or the other, or I can work with the contrast more. I could go over here and pick my favorite refine brush tool. You guys know I love that. Make it a little smaller, and maybe I can try to help refine some of this area that it really was struggling with. Once I have myself at a point where I like what I'm looking at here, and I'm thinking, okay, this works. These are up here, these are just different ways of looking at the selection with relationship to the background. There's the onion skin, marching ants, a ruby lith overlay on black, on white, just the black and white mask, or on the layer. Marching ants is for me probably one of my more favorite ways of looking at it. Once I'm happy with the way this looks, I'm going to click OK. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to hold down my space bar so I can see my composition again. Grab the V, the move tool, and actually bring this guy up into our composition. I'm going to get rid of the marching ants by going select, deselect, and we have brought all the vegetables and olives into our composition.